Thanks, Avnie. Thanks so much for this opportunity, and to everybody else I can see on the screen. I can even see my dad and my boyfriend. They're all there. And my mum's probably there in the background too. Good morning, everyone. Okay, I have a lot of slides to go through. It's a very open subject. Avnie asked me to talk about the behind the scenes of creativity, because for a lot of people, it remains a very ambiguous term. You know, what is creativity? And most people would be forgiven to immediately think of a French guy with a beret and paints on a canvas, or some Richard Gere movie where somebody's splashing lots of paints on the canvas, or somebody who's a little bit different and doesn't quite fit in. You know, there's so many stereotypes floating around. So I'd like to try and unpack this. And I thought about this quite a lot, and I thought the best way to speak, because it's really subjective, the best way to speak would be to use my own life as a timeline of how I how I came across my own voice over the years, and how that translated into increasing confidence. And of course, nobody can be completely confident, but you know, it's a work in progress. So let's see if I can share screen, and I'll just talk through the pictures.
Can I just add, if it's, I'm not sure how you guys are watching this, but I recommend you watch on speaker view, so you get the full screen and you get to really get to see Ketna properly.
Okay, so you can see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so I'm in a very messy office because I have the best Wi-Fi signal here, but that's what my living room looks like. And what I wanted to do today, and Avnie, please raise your hand if I speak for too long, because I need to keep an eye on the clock.
Okay.
If I just step out of this room at the door at the back, this is my living room and dining room, and it's my studio. So it's a bit of a poke in the eye, and my dad's always got something funny to say when he walks in. I don't know what he makes of it all, but I wanted to start with the present tense and then go back into the past and then back into the present, because we are an amalgamation of all sorts of timelines within us: the inner, the outer, the child, the girlfriend, the wife, the daughter. All these things converge in us. And it is only really our inner conviction and our confidence that keeps it all bonded together, so that we can put our best foot forward. And sometimes we falter, we fall, we stumble, and then we have to close our eyes, metaphorically, and listen to our inner voice again, and be okay to be whoever we are. So I am definitely not a minimalist, because there are so many stories inside of me and outside of me that it's just a complete travesty for me to be monochromatic in any way. This is the other side of the living room. It's almost like I need to live within my storytelling in order for me to validate my own observations in life. And as I go through the pictures, it might make more sense. So whether it's paying homage to Frida Kahlo in my bathroom, or Lord Buddha in my bedroom, I think symbolism and color is akin to a frozen energy that permeates every part of your life. So again, these are just some shots of random things in my house, in my bathroom, in my kitchen. And I'm just showing you this because I think for most artists, there's not much of a difference between their personal life and their public life. And today's topic, how can creativity help with your confidence, is all about being completely comfortable with letting this sort of osmosis happen, where your inner world can transmute into the outer world. So these are just some slides to show you where I grew up. I grew up in Kenya. I was born in Uganda. And I didn't come to London until I was 14. And it was always very bewildering to me to sit through a history class in Nairobi and be taught about some English guy that discovered the River Nile, for example, or that discovered Mount Everest in India, you know, as if these rivers and mountains didn't exist. So I think right from the beginning, even though I could not articulate it to myself, I was very skeptical about the narrative that was being imposed upon me through my particular education. And so it's only now, looking back, I can see the seeds of rebellion taking root in me. It's just like, I just thought, what the heck, I'm not going to buy that. I'm not going to buy that, you know. And over the years, I ended up either through accident or destiny or circumstances, I ended up going from Uganda to Kenya to Britain. And this is where I lived for 10 years in London, from the age of 14 till my early 20s. And I studied interior design, architecture, moved to Singapore to get my first job as an architect. And 25 years later, after living in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, India, I moved back to Stanmore, which is where I grew up. So I've kind of come full circle.
Sorry, Ketna, sorry,
Yes.
can I just tell you 1 second? Your host, and I think there's people waiting in the waiting room. Is there any way to get them in? I'm not sure how to co-host people.
How do I do that? How do I get them in?
If you go to participants, you should be able to see.
Oh, right. Admit. Okay.
You can just admit all of them.
Oh, there's lots of them.
Oh, yeah, I think the only host can do that. I'm not sure how to co-host today.
Okay, so you mean every time it pings, I should let people in, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, let me know if that happens again and I've spaced out.
I won't hear the ping, so you might just see when they come in. Just let them in.
Gordon Cookson. Okay. Hello, Gordon. Right.
All right. Thank you.
Are we back on the screen? We are, right?
Yes. Sorry to say.
Oh. Okay. So these are just photographs of the world that I grew up in. So it was it was corruption, it was markets, it was things falling apart, it was the most amazing colors in the streets, it was billboards bigger than buildings. It was just it was quite wacky. And then I give all that up at age 14 and come to Mill Hill, and suddenly I'm speaking English full time and learning about Tennyson and Shakespeare, and the confusion reigns in the little brain because I didn't quite understand it. So I think formative years for most people, we're like big sponges. We just absorb life, and we take in all these impressions, and we don't know who we are. Often it's a bit like going to Marks and Spencer and trying on lots of different shirts and then waiting to see which one fits. I think we try on many different personas. We try and hang out with different people. We try and fit in, and then we come home and cry because something doesn't fit, etc. And then, just like wine, you marinate in your own observations, and then ultimately this transmutes after a certain level of maturity into expression with in my case it's pop art, but for other people it could be writing. Oh, am I supposed to let people in?
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay, I think everybody's in. All right, so going back, sorry. Oh gosh, what's happening? You can see my screen, right? Yeah. I think my own journey has been all about reinterpreting history, and I've capitaled HIS as his story, because often history is written by the person who wins the war, or who's on top of the pecking order at that particular moment, and it's not necessarily the accurate version of history, and history can be very subjective. So, for example, on the left is an artwork from a collection I've recently embarked upon called Brit India, and it's all about Queen Victoria, and you have Mahatma Gandhi and his wife Kasturba, and they're kind of looking at each other. Of course, the whole thing is taking place as a kind of surreal collage. But, you know, I think both of them would be turning in their graves if they were to think that in 2023, we have an Indian prime minister in Britain. I mean, that's quite surreal. So we've come full circle. And on the right, I've got Lord Shiva doing his dance of destruction, which some of you might be familiar with. We have three main principalities in Hinduism. You have Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the maintainer, and Shiva is the destroyer. And he is the most worshipped god in India, which is really interesting, because I often think that without destruction, you can't have creation. You know, without yesterday being folded up, we couldn't have started today. Without an old chapter closing, a new chapter can't begin. So the Lord of Destruction in this case is doing his thing, and it's not always to be interpreted as doom and gloom, because there's many things happening in this composition. We don't have time for interpretation. But in this very similar way to that Lord Shiva painting, we have, I have another artwork that I did a few years ago called The Last Asian Supper. And this was really a spoof of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, which was about Jesus having his last supper with his 12 disciples before the crucifixion. In my interpretation, I've got Asian politicians stuffing their faces with junk food, Western junk food, while the sun is setting in the background. And so normally if you were at a picnic and the sun was setting, you'd be clearing all your stuff and all your belongings and getting ready to go home. But they're oblivious to the darkness that's about to befall them. So I think with humor and with metaphors and symbolism, color, you can as an artist have full license to interpret current affairs yourself, and in doing that you are writing history. Excuse me. So in the same way, I mean, I've just got lots of little examples. It's by no means completely comprehensive, but I thought for today's purpose I wanted to show how I, as an British African Indian, has taken a Renaissance painting, a very famous painting, which was called The Birth of Venus, and then I've cheekily renamed it The Fall of Venus, which is, you know, again, a lot of interpretations about China taking off the sari from India being represented by Draupadi, and the Western civilization looking on, here represented by the Statue of Liberty in New York, all whilst standing on the same Shell, but except this time it's Shell, the petroleum company, and it's the petroleum oil refineries in the background that are spewing out these quite nice looking clouds, which are actually very toxic. So the reason I've used this color palette and the reason I've made it look almost like advertising is because our world is dominated and saturated by advertising. And I often think of it as you know, these chocolates like Maltesers or like sugar-coated pills, you know, it's full of chemicals and God knows what, but it's sugar-coated so that it can be more palatable. Or that we can be fooled into easy consumption. So here's a reinterpretation of The Fall of Venus, which I did during lockdown. the interpretation is quite obvious. And then the moving back to London has been very interesting, because I came back when we were at the height of the whole Brexit debate. And so I don't necessarily have an opinion, but I like to go and talk to people on the street, travel through the country, Europe as well, find out what they're saying, because I don't always agree with the media. In fact, the type of life I've had, I am very suspicious of the media, and reality is often the opposite of what is portrayed in not just media, but in our on our television and in academia as well. So the one at the top was inspired by Phil Collins' song, and I've called it "Selling England by the Pound," because we seem to have sold off so much of what is inherently ours, but whether it's water or our motorways or our utilities. And the artwork at the bottom is called WTF. I won't say out loud what that represents. And it really is a kind of large panorama of many different world events. And I've deliberately done it in such a way that you don't have a background or a foreground. And you can see that I've used other paintings and I've kind of amalgamated it together. So being alive in the 21st century is fantastic as an artist, because using technology and the computer, I can reinterpret stories in such an elastic way that I might not have been able to. Was I born 100 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to paint all this. It would have taken me ages. Okay, so a lot of what I do is to try in my own little way to dissolve stereotypes about what it means to be Indian or brown or Asian, and to have fun with our identities, because we often get shackled by other people's definitions of who we are. And then if we don't have enough self-conviction or enough inner confidence, we don't have the guts or courage to come up with our own definition of who we are and of where the world is at. So confidence, again, to reiterate what I was saying earlier, confidence is an ability to turn your back on the imposed narrative and to undo the systematic conditioning that we're all embroiled in. And the more knots that you undo, or the more detached you get from the imposition of the narrative, the closer you are to your inner voice. And for me, that's an absolute prerequisite in any type of creativity. You have to be authentic. Even if you're the only one in a million, you have to be authentic to your voice. Even if you're ahead of the world or you don't fit in, you have to, otherwise you're leading a secondhand life. And, that's just boring. Just some more optics of this Brit Indian thing. So here I am coming back after 25 years. I'm also having fun with my British Indian identity, which is brilliant. I love living in Stanmore. I live off a road called Gordon Avenue, but we've nicknamed it Gordon Bay Avenue because there's so many Indians living here. But I love it. I love that I can go down to Mumbai local and have a dosa and masala chai, and go down to Sainsbury's and speak in Gujarati to the cashier. I love the fact that in many ways we are here because you were there. That's also the subtitle of one of my collections, so history is cyclical, time is cyclical as well. So I'm having fun with these new compositions, new narratives. They're cheeky, they're meant to poke fun at who we are. Again, creativity, confidence, ideas, ideals, mythology, symbolism, religion. I mean, there is so much hidden in plain sight. I don't know if anybody's really quite realized that the goddesses, the female principle that is used as mascots for Britain and India are quite similar. We have the trident, we have the lion, we have the goddess. What's going on, right? So there's lots of fun to be had if you dig deeper. But in order to dig deeper, first of all, you have to be curious. Every time you pass a statue in London or in India, or when you're traveling, and you think, hey, that's weird, I've seen that before, you know, make a mental note, document it, come back home, Google it, or don't Google it. Google doesn't always tell you everything, but find out interpretations, and slowly by slowly, you start joining up the dots between how everything is connected. So these are a couple of romantic pieces that I've done recently. The one on the right is called Tell a Vision. So it's the kind of, you know, it's a man's head, but instead of a head, he's got a television, and inside the television is a man from the British East India Company. I mean, there's all sorts of things going on there. So, you know, even the titles themselves kind of lead you into a different way of interpreting the artwork. There's these two are recent paintings. My palette seems to have changed as well now that I'm back here and the sun doesn't shine as much, so it's less pop, but it's softer. Maybe I'm getting older as well. So these are I'm just going to take you through because we're running out of time. How many minutes do we have?
So Ketna, we've got about 10 minutes left, so it'll be great to get a couple of questions in as well.
Yes. Okay, so let me just zoom through just different visuals. I use collage a lot in my work. Again, creativity for me is observing. And then the way we observe things is often with the help of our cameras. So with all the millions of photographs that I take, what do? I put them together and I use all sorts of collage and junk mail and wrapping paper and paint and stuff to bring this story to the surface. This, for example, is a story of different doorways all over Asia. So collage is a phenomenal medium to help us observe things better, because we can't keep it all in our head. We need tools. This is a story about Nepal. This was a commission. These are all hotel, a lot of them are hotel commissions. This was Cuba. This is just my different versions of my studio. This was my studio in Singapore. It became a place where people congregated and met regularly. And let me admit somebody in. I started running a commune because Singapore was very expensive. So there were 10 of us living together for 15 years. And that in itself became a live creative laboratory. Oh, this is what happens. Okay. So these are just different photographs of how creativity is not necessarily a solo exercise. It is also about community. It is about the cross-pollination of ideas, conversations, dinners, discussions, heated discussions. Also, who says art has to be on a canvas that you hang on the wall? I mean, why can your car not be a canvas? So a few years ago, I bought an old Rolls Royce on eBay, and then I had it car wrapped with art. I did the same with furniture. Why do we have to sit on boring brown furniture? Why can furniture not be a canvas for our stories? This was a collaboration with an Austrian company. This was Tata Nano gave me 2 cars, and I covered it with Italian mosaic with a company called Sitges, an Italian mosaic company. So this was a fiberglass elephant for the elephant parade in Singapore. I think you have one in London as well. These are just carpets, fashion. I was often asked to license my artwork for all sorts of things. These are all commissions in Singapore. a restaurant. Rupee Room became a very famous Bollywood cafe restaurant, and I did the interiors. It helped for my background to be interior design and architecture. Maybe that helped me also break away from the canvas mode. I did a lot of work for IFA, which is the equivalent of the Indian Oscars. So I did a lot of their merchandising and stage sets. These are what the opening nights of art exhibitions, of my art exhibitions in Singapore are like. You know, Singapore is brilliant because you have people from all over the world. Again, the more you interact with different cultures, the more confident you become, the less you stop identifying as a Gujarati or an Indian. You're just now a global citizen, because and then there's so much to learn from each other. So I loved my 20 years there. This is another big installation in Singapore. I'm going to have to zoom through this. We don't have much time.
We've got 5 minutes, Ketna.
Okay, Spike Lee. Yeah, he bought one of my chairs, and I've got lots of pictures of all sorts of people. I did a lot of projects in India in the last few years in rural villages, because I'm not so attracted to the middle class India, because they seem to be aping the West. I mean, I know I'm generalizing, but I'm interested in the heart of India, where the genesis of India is. And so I do all these projects which have been phenomenally powerful for me to understand who I am and my own identity, and India and where it's at today. So just more pictures. This is in the old days when I quit architecture and I decided to become an artist. I don't have good resolution photographs, but I had no money. I had to pay for rent. I started off by just doing a studio show by having artwork in the garden, and that evolved into me teaching. I was teaching kids. I was doing commissions at airports. And I just didn't want anything white in my house. I painted all the kitchen cabinets, and this is the commune. There were lots of people. We were always having lots of events and poetry evenings and music evenings. This was my messy studio, and which evolved into something a little bit more sophisticated. We had a lot of different cultures come and visit us. We became quite well known on the tourist scene. My confidence grew, not because I was confident, but because other people seemed to tune into what I was doing. Along the way, I made a few mistakes. My ex-husband and I bought a chapel in Wales, and now it's with him and not with me. And sometimes I wonder what that whole story was all about. Now, Avnie's come to this, but this is my art studio in Stanmore. So if, you know, I don't want art to only exist in central London. Why can Stanmore not have art? Why can we not have art events in Stanmore? This is Lizzie, who's the chair lady of the Harrow Open Studios, which is a local arts group that I joined 2 years ago. And through her and other people, I've made friends, and we've had so much fun. We've had events, get invited to parties. Cheryl, who was one of the speakers yesterday, is one of them, is one of the members. And so that's it. That's my presentation.